Welcome once again to DAZN MMA. Sean O'Connell and Dan Hardy here to talk about Professional Fighters League, our second regular season event. It was women's featherweights and heavyweights, two wide open divisions. Women's featherweight is brand new in the PFL. It was always women's lightweights before. Kayla Harrison is no longer part of the regular season format. Last year's champion at women's lightweight, Larissa Pacheco, has come down. So I think she's the woman to chase, but this was the first regular season bout. So the playoff picture still has to be figured out all the way when we get to Atlanta and see the heavyweights and the women's featherweights again. Just really interesting fights, some pretty interesting matchups. And of course, when you're talking Professional Fighters League, the director of fighter operations for PFL Europe, Dan Hardy, always keeps a close eye on things. So your overarching sort of sense of this card, what'd you think of night two of our regular season?
You know, I enjoyed it. Same as night one. I thought there were some really well-matched fights. I thought there was some very, very clever game plans. I thought we saw some real, evolutions in some fighters' games, which of course we'll get into. But, big differences from some fighters. Like you can clearly see that their thinking from last year has changed. What they're trying to achieve in there is different. Managing their skills and their energy systems better. I just thought overall it was really good. And I think Larissa Pacheco looks better at featherweight. I feel like she's going to be just as powerful and as strong, but she's going to move quicker and she's going to be really problematic when she settles into this weight class.
Okay, we'll get to Larissa Pacheco, Julia Budd. That was the main event in just a minute here. I wanted to kind of go through some superlatives I took away from the card leading up to it. Thing that maybe I'm most impressive performance, if we want to call it that, for me, Evelyn Martins is 20 years old, trains down at American Top Team, okay? So far, largely unheralded prospect because she's 20 years old and she's 5 fights into her professional mixed martial arts career after some impressive time in the amateurs where she started when she was 15. This is her third fight in less than 2 months. She took on a very tough opponent in Poland's Karolina Sobek, and she came away with another victory. 3 victories, Dan Hardy, in less than 2 months. Twice on the Challenger Series, now in the regular season. She earned herself some points, and she competed like a veteran once again. This is someone who, at an age when most of us hadn't even started our mixed martial arts careers yet, is already.
I mean that's the difference, isn't it? And I think we're going to be talking about this a lot in the coming years. Is the fighters that have settled at a big team at a young age and they've started absorbing mixed martial arts, from the get-go. It's a scary thing because they fight with a level of composure which some guys in the early days never were able to achieve. Mixed martial arts seems so much more comfortable for these younger fighters now because they understand every range and how they interlock. Back in our day, we were going, okay, I'll grab some of that and I'll grab some of that and I'll see how they fit together. If you're at such a powerful gym with the so many prospects and champions around you, as well as the coaches that have got those prospects and champions where they are, it's a recipe for success, isn't it? And I feel like she's proven not only her own success, but also the potential success that you can have as a young prospect with the PFL.
Another thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't like to do this to fighters because I was a fighter and you don't want people focusing on your losses, but the what the hell happened award for me right now goes to Renan Ferreira, who's a guy at 6'8" with freakish athleticism, and I mean freakish athleticism. We've beat the damn backflip highlight to death on all of our PFL broadcasts, right? Because you're not supposed to see a 6'8", 250-pound guy backflipping off of 1 foot. Most people can't do it, right? We saw what he looks like when he's like truly dialed in. We saw what one right hand can do against Stuart Austin. We saw against Jamel Jones when he's just like kind of throwing a feeler kick out there. If you put your head in the wrong place and that lands, you go unconscious, right? But now he's riding 3 straight losses. Rizvan Kuniev, newcomer to the Professional Fighters League out of Dagestan, big, scary athlete in his own right, dominated Renan Ferreira and now I'm looking at a guy who's still young enough to go back to the drawing board. He's yet to see 30 years of age, if I'm not mistaken. He's got all the athletic potential in the world, but riding a skid that puts a lot of people out of an organization like the PFL, riding a skid that puts a lot of people kind of on the back burner and maybe a little bit disinterested in their own career. And I don't want to take anything away from Kuniev because he's clearly got a well-rounded skill set. Wushu Sanda background, still lives and trains. And he splits his time between Thailand and home soil in Mahaskala, Dagestan. So he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. But what the hell is going on with Reina Ferreira?
You know, I don't know. He seems to really struggle when he's put under pressure. It's almost like he's having flashbacks of the last time he lost a fight because he was under pressure. And sometimes I feel like, you know, when you see a guy that's so big, you look at him and you go, "Well, surely you can fight." You know, surely you can fight. But then in actuality, because they've been such a huge person all their life, they don't get challenged as much as some of the smaller guys, like a you know, a Masvidal that's had 300 street fights because everyone wants to fight him. I feel like maybe he's still, as you said, you know, he's on the right side of 30. He's still young in his career. I think he might just have to realize himself. He might have to watch himself perform, you know, watch some of his victories and kind of reminisce on how he felt in those moments and how dangerous he can be. I feel like he could be a contender in this division, no doubt. But if he struggles when he's put under pressure and everyone sees that, then they're going to know how to beat him each time out. But like you said, you know, he is still young. As a heavyweight especially, like most heavyweights aren't peaking until they're in their late 30s. So he's got plenty of time yet, but he's going to have to change a few things for sure.
Best game plan, best adjustments, whichever you want to call it, was the biggest upset of the night. She was the second largest underdog on the main card. Olena Kolesnik, former member of the Ukrainian national boxing team, who's obviously got that boxing background, 200 plus amateur boxing bouts, made the transition to mixed martial arts, has had some growing pains in 2 seasons already as a women's lightweight in the PFL. And she missed weight for this fight, right? Came in great shape, missed by 0.4 of a pound. I was devastated by it and was a huge underdog against Aspen Ladd, who at one time in this women's featherweight division was supposed to be the next big thing, right? And maybe she still will be because she's young enough to make that happen, similar to what we were just talking about. But Olena Kolesnik took control of this fight early and just stayed out ahead. She had it well in hand until the third round. She got taken down and gave up her back. Survived that though, and just a really impressive performance from someone who needed to make these adjustments in order to prove that she still belongs and can contend.
Yeah, for sure. She was one of the most impressive to me because, you know, I remember her previous fights thinking to myself, she's too wild. She's going to walk onto something, and you know, we've seen that happen. But
Yeah.
when she's facing Aspen Ladd, she's got someone that constantly pushes forward. Aspen Ladd doesn't really have a great deal of footwork. She walks into range, which, you know, for someone who's got a boxing background that doesn't know how to use their feet and their movement, she just kept drawing Aspen Ladd onto shots. I thought she looked very composed. I thought she looked far more kind of, you know, certain of what her goal it was in there. Like the previous fight, she just looks like she's kind of throwing it all at her opponent and kind of seeing what sticks. But with Aspen Ladd, it looked like she researched her. It looked like she knew when she was going to step onto shots and what she was going to hit her with. You know, and even after losing that third round, you know, she got straight back up at the end. She knew she'd won the first 2 rounds. She was celebrating immediately. I think she overcame something at that event, and I think Aspen Ladd was a big step for her, and a big name to put on her record. You know, what Aspen Ladd 10-3 coming into that. You know, she's a young fighter, but she's formidable. She's vicious, and in that last round, I mean, the thing that scares me about Aspen Ladd is the screech that she makes when she's punching her opponent on the ground. She's a terrifying individual, but at no point did Kolesnik break from her game plan at all. She stuck to what she needed to do. She stayed safe on the floor, and she showed a maturity that I don't think we've seen before in her career.
Yeah, she gets 3 points for a decision victory, but -1 point for missing weight. So she now finds herself potentially in need of a finish in her second regular season bout in order to make the playoffs. So that's something to keep an eye on because it was an impressive performance. It was a really good game plan adjustment and all that stuff. So happy to see her with the success that she expected. And obviously now, Aspen Ladd, if she wants to make the playoffs, right, she's going to need not only a win, but she's going to need a finish. And having your back up against the wall in that way for a fighter like her, who's done a good job of kind of being measured and being professional and all that stuff, might force her to bite down a little bit and go for something that the more careful version of Aspen Ladd doesn't want to. That should lead to something exciting when we see these women again in Atlanta. Still don't know what the matchups are for either of those women. Those will be coming out in the next few weeks. All right. I don't have a superlative for this one except for holy shit, the power that Bruno Capelloza has in his hands. Mateusz Scheffel, Bruno Capelloza, co-main event. Last time, Mateusz Scheffel pulled off the biggest upset of that card, the biggest upset, the biggest win of Mateusz Scheffel's career. A 2021 heavyweight champion, Bruno Capelloza, got dethroned, got surprised, got shocked because Mateusz Scheffel stayed aggressive and kept Bruno on his back foot. And Scheffel wins a decision victory, a pretty dominant performance by Scheffel in that case. And Scheffel was fighting the right fight here, Dan. He was doing the exact same thing. He was moving his head. He was lining up his punches. He was staying out of range and jumping back in to string together his combinations. His footwork was pretty sharp. But when you're a heavyweight, and you're a heavyweight who's got the explosive power that Bruno Capelloza does, one punch or one punch at the end of a combination can be the end. And that's exactly what happened. He throws kind of that searching, slapping hook that brings Mateusz Scheffel right back onto the center line. Laser right hand. Drops Bufa, which is one of the greatest nicknames in all of mixed martial arts because Bufa translates to fart. Great backstory on that one. But I digress. Bruno Capelloza, he's back.
Yeah, he looked really, really good. You know, it was a fun 2 minutes. I mean, they were going back and forth. There was a point where Scheffel had Capelloza backed up against the fence, and he was catching him with some really clean shots. Capelloza looked a little bit, flustered at times when he was getting caught with shots. And I think, Scheffel was confident that he was going to continue walking him down and get his way. But then there was kind of a bit of a shift. Scheffel would move back a little bit, Capelloza moved forward, and as you said, that slap hook that opened up his guard to bring the right hand down the pipe was very, very crisp, very clean, perfectly on the target, and not really any wind up, which shows you kind of how much power he's got effortlessly. I don't even think he intended on putting him down with that punch. It was just such a clean shot right on his chin, dropped him on the spot. Very, very exciting. Heavyweights are always a lot of fun to watch. And when you've got two guys that are happy to stand in the pocket and trade like that, we're always going to get these kind of finishes. I love it. I'm a big fan of both of these guys. I would like to see them both continue moving forward and having success because their style is just so explosive.
That put Bruno Capelloza at the top of the heavyweight standings for now. We still have coming up this week, coming Friday, a heavyweight bout between Patrick Brady and Dennis Goltsov because there were some issues that they had to postpone that fight. So one more heavyweight fight to round out the first half of the playoff standings, first half of the regular season. That's still to come, coming up in our third show in Vegas. It's supposed to be this way. We want it to be this way when it comes to matchmaking. It doesn't always work out this way, but the best fight of the night happened to be the main event at PFL 2, Larissa Pacheco and Julia Budd. And I'll admit, Julia Budd's had some struggles since coming over to the PFL. Her last fight was against Aspen Ladd in a showcase opportunity. She lost that fight. She lost her PFL debut. I was like, man, is the best version of Julia Budd no longer there? She's getting up there in age, right? Former world champion at 145 pounds, coming back to featherweight. She promised us, like, this is my weight class. I'm going to look better here. I'm going to feel better here. I'm going to fight better here. Julia's camp, I have to admit, I was skeptical but hopeful of that because I know what it's like to be an aging fighter. She looked better than we've seen. Unfortunately for her, she was against Larissa Pacheco, who last year was incredibly dominant, pulled off the upset of the year in mixed martial arts by beating Kayla Harrison in a championship. And Larissa Pacheco at 145 pounds was pushed to the limit by Julia Budd in her first outing, which I think was very, very important for both fighters, but especially for Larissa.
Yeah, I think it was good, especially for Larissa to get those 3 rounds under her belt, at featherweight against a former champion from Bellator. I think it does a lot for her confidence. And I still feel like Julia Budd is, a serious contender in this division, just because she got Pacheco in the, the first one of the season. I feel like we can't overlook her still. There's some really standout fighters in this bracket. Laybrook's head kick against Jindrova was a beautiful finish. She's definitely someone to keep an eye on because of the size of her and her striking abilities. But still, you look at the experience and the physical build of Julia Budd. She's an incredible athlete. I feel like she's still going to come on strong in this season at the moment. So we've got to keep an eye on her. But a very, very fun fight, and it was nice to see that Pacheco tested at times as well, because she can be a bully at times, and sometimes if a bully starts to get bullied, they tend to fall apart. And she's always shown supreme toughness as well as really nice skills off her back. I mean, that triangle at the end of the round was very close as well. That could have been the end.
Well, yeah, I mean, we saw her win a championship a year ago with at least 2 of those rounds being off her back, right? I mean, Larissa Pacheco, during that run where she knocked 4 women out in the first round over a 2-year span, it's easy when you see that explosiveness, you see that power, you see the way that, I mean, her body moves differently than a lot of women in the sport. When she's really dialed in and really throwing punches, you're like, okay, that is a power puncher. It was easy for people to forget that she's an incredibly well-balanced mixed martial artist. And by the way, Larissa Pacheco still yet to be 30 years of age. She's 29. She's someone who's got plenty of gas left in the tank. And Julia Budd brought out the best in her because Budd did bully her a little bit. Budd is physically capable of doing that, the same way that Kayla Harrison was in the championship bout. Was capable of pushing strength for strength, chest to chest, up against the cage. A lot of people, Larissa Pacheco just bullies in that situation. But she wasn't able to do that. She had to rely on her skills. She had to rely on jiu-jitsu. She had to rely on technique in the striking exchanges instead of just blasting and being too fast and powerful, because Julia Budd is every bit of that, right? So it was good to see that from both women. It was good to see that from Larissa Pacheco, who wants to be thought of as one of the best female fighters in the world, still trying to climb that, still trying to get traction in the eyes of fans. And if you're just a one-trick pony in this sport, Dan, you know better than I do, like, even if you're really, really good at the thing that you're really, really good at, if all that is just landing punches and knocking people out, or you're only good at head kicks or whatever, the media, the fans, other fighters, they won't give you the respect that maybe you deserve. Larissa Pacheco is proving that she can win a fight anywhere. On her feet, she's on top. When you're on top, she is a problem in every moment of a mixed martial arts fight. And this was one of those bouts that really put her to the test. I loved watching it.
But for sure. And that's the best thing about Pacheco's game, in my opinion, is the fact that it's all geared towards finishing. Her striking, as you said, when she throws punches, you can tell she's got power, natural power, the way she plants her back foot to pitch that right hand. And then when it hits the floor, clamping down on her opponents, controlling their shoulders, attacking arms and triangles. Like, everything is about finishing the fight. The times when we've seen her struggle is against the likes of Kayla, when she's been controlled in that middle range where she can't strike or grapple very well. So she's kind of subdued. But while ever she's got autonomy in the fight to move at her own pace, she is dangerous for everybody. And I think Julia Budd is the good litmus test for the rest of these fighters in this division to kind of see where they're at, because we've got to think that Pacheco is most likely going to be the favorite moving forward. And I feel like there are some tough tests in this division, but it might be someone a surprise win over a Julia Budd that might spark our interest in the next contender for Pacheco.
So as I already mentioned, PFL 1 and 2 in the books. PFL 3 will be the close of the first half of the regular season, and then we'll have about a 6-week break. Be back in Atlanta as all these fighters take part in their second regular season bout, and that figures out the playoff situation, the playoff seeding. So high stakes this coming week. It's lightweights and welterweights. Sada Boussi, last year's champion, is back at welterweight against Jarrah Al-Salawi. You've got Olivia Aubin-Mercier, OAM, last year's lightweight champion, taking on Hurricane Shane Burgos, who's finally making his PFL debut, and some great matchups up and down the card, including that bonus heavyweight fight with Dennis Goltsov participating. So lots to watch.